Dear students, we continue our discussion of speculative demand for money by considering the desirability of bond versus money. Now we know that the return on these two types of assets is like this. Return on money is zero. Money give the convenience of transactions. Return on money is zero. Expected return on bond is, on bond you have an interest rate of plus or minus capital gain or loss, plus capital gain or loss. If future rate of interest increases, capital loss, otherwise capital gain. So return on money is zero, whereas a bond will pay an interest rate R plus or minus a capital gain. An investor who expects that interest rate will increase in future expect capital loss. On the other hand, one who thinks that interest rate will decrease in future expects capital gain. Suppose that an investor believes that R will fall in future. An investor believes that interest rate will fall in future. Then bond will be the preferred asset, because in addition to R, there will be a capital gain on bond. As I told you, if initially R was 5%, now if R becomes 4%, a bond with a face value of 1000 will now give 1250, a capital gain of 250. On the other hand, if R increases to 6%, then the price of bond will become 833.33. There is a capital loss. In that case, money will be the preferred asset. In the first case, bond will be the preferred asset. Now let me give a formal definition of speculative demand for money. Money held in the form of money held in the anticipation of fall in bond prices, that is, rise in interest rates, is Keynes' speculative demand for money. Money held in the anticipation of a fall in bond prices or a rise in interest rate is Keynes' speculative demand for money. Now, up to this point, we have a relation between the amount of money demanded and expected future changes in interest rates. Keynes converted this relationship to one between demand for money and the level of interest rate by an assumption about how people form expectations about future interest rates. That is, from money demand to expected changes in interest rate to money demand to level of interest. An assumption about how people form expectations about future changes in interest rates. And Keynes believed that people have a relatively stable expectation about normal interest rates. People have a fixed conception about normal interest rates. And given this notion of normal interest rates, if wealth holders, investors, believe that current rate of interest is very high relative to the normal interest rate, then they expect that interest rate will fall in future. So they will hold, let this normal interest rate is R star. If R is greater than R star, then people believe that interest rate will decrease in future, so they will keep a bond instead of money. And in the society, there are a large number of wealth holders, investors, so they have different conceptions about what is normal interest rate. There is different views about what is normal interest rate, and there is no specific interest rate that if approaches trigger a massive shift of funds from money to bonds. Such an interest rate is not existing. But if R falls, if interest rate falls beginning at high rates, the decline in R move the rate below the critical rate of many investors. If R falls from a very high interest rate, it is possible that this R will fall below R star, the normal rate of many investors. It is possible. And for very low values of interest rate, all investors come to believe that interest rate will rise in future. In that case, money will be the preferred asset. And proceeding in this way, we can construct an aggregate demand for speculative balances like this. And I write it as MSP, like this. MSP R. Let it be R0. What I say is, say R0 is equal to say 14%. In that case, there is no speculative demand for money beyond 14%, because it is so high that it is much higher than the normal rate of anyone, and everyone believes that interest rate will decrease in future. So money will be the preferred asset, speculative demand for money will be. But if you consider only a single individual, he will prefer either bond or money, depending on what is normal interest rate as per his conviction. But when we consider many investors, there is no normal rate of interest for all. So there will be some speculative demand at each level of interest rate. But as you can see, the curve flattens out at a low rate of interest. This is because more and more people believe that at a low rate of interest, it will increase in future rather than decrease in future, so that there will be capital loss. So more and more people will keep his asset in the form of money. And at a very low rate of interest, more and more wealth holders hold their wealth in the form of money, and Keynes termed this level of interest as liquidity trap. We call this, that is, at a very low rate of interest, speculative demand for money is almost zero. Speculative demand for money is almost infinite. Almost infinite. That is, everyone will keep his money, his asset, his wealth in the form of money. That rate of interest is consistent with what is known as liquidity trap. At low rate of interest, everyone will keep their asset in the form of money rather than bond. Keynes called this the liquidity trap. And this liquidity trap is very important at a theoretical point of view that we will discuss in the next session. And in the form of an equation, we can write M must be as equal to P into HR, because speculative demand for money is inversely related to rate of interest, and M must be by P is equal to HR, and this is MSP in small letters in real terms. Speculative balances in real terms if it's a function of the rate of interest. And this is Keynes' speculative demand for money, and this has one shortcoming. The shortcoming is that wealth holders has only a choice between money and bonds. But remember this, in the real world, wealth holders can keep their wealth in various forms, and Keynes considers all the interest-bearing assets in the form of money. That is one weakness of Keynes' theory of demand for money. So in the Keynesian system, money demand originates from transaction motive, precautionary motive, and speculative motive. Now we combine these three to derive the total demand for money. The total demand for money, MD, in real terms is equal to MT plus M, the total demand for money, MD is equal to MT plus M must be, and this is equal to MT is M, it was written as KY plus MSP was written as HR. So total demand for money is equal to MT plus MSP is equal to KY plus HR. Now let us see a graphical representation to this. Suppose that Y is 400, K is equal to 1 by 4. So transaction demand for money is 100. Transaction demand for money is 100. Now, when Y is equal to 400, I first consider transaction demand MT. When Y is equal to 400, this is equal to 100. Whatever is the level of interest, whatever is the level of interest, say 8%, 10%, 14%, etc. When plotted against rate of interest, transaction and precautionary demand for money is interest inelastic. Interest inelastic. And when plotted against rate of interest, when the interest rate is 14%, speculative demand for money is 0 and it gradually increases. MSP. MT, MSP. At 10%, this is speculative demand. At 8%, this is speculative demand, like this. So MSP at 10%, at 8%, like this. Now we combine these two. 14%. You know, when the rate of interest is 14%, there is only transaction demand. There is only transaction demand for money equal to 100. This is MT plus M must be. And as the interest rate decreases, we have At 10%, for example, transaction demand, speculative demand. At 8%, this is MT and this is MSP. Now, an important point to remember is, if Y, this is the total demand MD for Y is equal to 400. We show the relationship between demand for money and rate of interest, keeping income constant. Suppose that K is 1/4 itself, Y increases to 800, this becomes 200. And as you can see, speculative demand is not affected, but there is a doubling of transaction demand, and this 100 becomes 200, and it will be like this. So remember this. So this is the new demand for money curve when Y is equal to 800. So when income increases, its effect is shown on the demand for money curve as a shift factor. Keep it always in mind. And the vertical distance between the money demand curve and the y-axis is the transaction demand for money. Now it is 100 becomes 200. And this is MD and y is equal to 800. And this is total demand for money consisting of transaction demand, precautionary demand and speculative demand. And this is Keynesian theory of demand for money.